From the MTV studio in New York to the faint glow of my beating heart. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jason Byrne.
And I'm Danny Nucci. And this is the What About podcast.
I'm sorry. They say you should never meet your idols, but they have never said you shouldn't meet your crushes, because Karen Duffy was one of my biggest crushes growing up.
Oh my God. Dude, she's my new crush. Are you kidding? She's literally my new crush. I'm like, Jesus.
It's solidified forever. The amazing part is that she's also a fan of the podcast. So now I'm like double crushing. I don't think I could crush anymore. I'm a double stuffed Oreo crush.
She appeals to your lower nature, your ego.
Maybe. I think she was so cool in the 90s, and I was like such a music geek.
She's so cool. So pleasantly impressed with her, and then I just had so much respect for her listening to her. Don't take my word for it. By all means, listen on. Here she is, MTV VJ, model, mother, philanthropist,
Jackass owner,
hospice chaplain, and the list goes on and on. She's got an incredible book called Wise Up, and I am just a huge fan. The incomparable Karen Duffy.
Hey guys, how you doing?
There she is. Good. How are you, Karen Duffy?
I'm very well, thank you.
Can I call you Duff? Is that all right?
Yes, thank you very much.
I mean, that's how you are in my heart and always have been, Duff.
Get out of here.
So here you are, Duff.
and that's how she is on the screen as well.
No, it's true.
Look at you. Hey, I didn't know, Danny, that you did the music for your show.
Yeah, well, you throw a couple things together. And
I know, but it's so peppy and jazzy. I dig it.
yeah, well, I'm peppy, as you'll learn. I'm kind of a
Peppy, I know. You got pep in your stuff.
Listen, I was just looking for an excuse to use horns.
Ha, I love it.
Jason was like, "Can you throw some music together?" I'm like, "Yeah, any excuse to use horns." So I was just playing with horns. Where are you, by the way? What part of the world are you in?
I'm in New York City, in Greenwich Village, where I live.
You live in the Village? God bless you.
I live between here. We have a farm in Connecticut, so so I spend the weekends at the farm.
Like a real New Yorker. I'm in the city during the week, and on the weekend we go to our second home or our second residence.
Yeah, it's great.
Very New York of you.
Exactly.
And we were chatting over email about some snow. How much did you end up getting?
Yeah, we had about a foot. It was lovely.
Ooh.
It was great. It's we live in this microclimate, and we have jackasses and water buffalo. And
I was going to ask about the donkeys.
Is there a difference between donkey and jackass, or is it the same thing?
Nope, Jack is the male term for a donkey, and a jenny is the term for a female.
A jenny.
A jenny. But Danny, it's so funny that you love horns, because I am a huge fan of Herb Albert.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I see him so frequently that he actually sent me a note, and he was like, "I didn't see you on this tour."
That's awesome.
I know.
Yeah, he gets the whole thing going, right? I mean, it's a whole section, and I'm sure it's fantastic. I've never seen him, unfortunately, but I've seen YouTube and listened to him. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you're in LA, right?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a jazz club.
Yeah, he's got a club here. Yeah. It's literally. I have no excuse. Is the point that I'm making, Karen?
You got to fly when the window's open.
I just don't leave my house, so there's that. Like, even this became a thing because I didn't have to leave my house. That's how this happened. Jason was like, "You don't have to leave your house."
Although we did do a few episodes. We did a few episodes with you in the backseat of the car, which was technically leaving the house.
Well, it was being in the garage to get better sound. Let's not kid ourselves. But thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to talk to you.
Thank you.
I've not read your book, but what a fucking undertaking. I mean, it is unbelievable that you have taken this very difficult life situation that has landed upon you, and you have turned it into a humorous, digestible, fun, helpful book to help people. It's really cool. I wanted to ask, because people that don't know, can you just talk a little bit about how you went from do it all to I'm going to be an author now? That's I'm going to write a book now.
Well, actually, I've written 4 books, and I'm on my 5th right now.
This is my point.
I was always had been a writer, Danny. When I was on MTV, I wrote for Spin and the New York Times. And
So you had a journalism background, in essence.
no, actually, funny enough, my background was in gerontology.
Watch your mouth, first of all. It's a family show. No, what is gerontology? I'm not familiar.
Taking care of the geriatric population.
Oh,
okay.
I was a recreational therapist at the nursing home right around the corner where I grew up volunteering. And after college, I moved back to New York and got my dream job, which was calling bingo at the nursing home.
Says no one ever. My dream job.
Honestly, when you feel like you have a purpose and that you are giving some light into someone who is suffering, it is the greatest joy. And I realized that as a recreational therapist working in a memory care unit, that I was impervious to embarrassment. I mean, I would do anything to make the residents laugh. And I would host Frank Sinatra Appreciation Day, and I would call bingo. And I just had so much love. And then I realized, wow, MTV is diminishing young people's attention span. And I know exactly how to communicate to people who have a short attention span. So I made a video and sent it into MTV unsolicited. And
Hold on. I love these kind of stories. And every time somebody says, yeah, so I just took it upon myself, I'm just so like, wait a minute. I want to know how that happened, because, we interviewed Richard Lewis, the comedian Richard Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he said is, he was in college at Ohio State, and he just started writing jokes and sending them to people. And this is his end. Like, he was just, you know what, I want to do this. I'm sending. And so you're sitting there, you're going, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I mean, obviously you're gorgeous. So it must have helped that you were on video. They went, hold on. Who's this person? But what made you decide this is going to work? Was it just beautiful youth naivete? I need more of that, by the way.
Exactly. And the fact that we are so blessed with our lives. And why not squeeze as much as we can out of every day? And I realized that I had this skill set. And so I'd never been on camera before. I made a video and sent it in.
Based on, sorry to interrupt you. I'm the worst. But basically, you realized you had this skill set because the response you were getting from being in front of an audience, geriatric audience, that it'd be, you noticed that there was a consistent response, that it worked. And so in essence, you were like, you know what, this is like a thing. Like, I have a thing.
Well, I knew that my elocution was crisp. People could understand me. What's interesting, in hospitals, it's usually a white doctor with white hair and a white coat against a white wall. And it's really hard to see.
That's hilarious. Never thought of that.
But, us olive-skinned, we are highly visible. I'm black and white and red. So I'm a very high contrast person. So that just, like, without even focusing, it catches your attention because I'm more visible. So I knew this going in, and I figured, if I stayed working at the nursing home for like the 3 years I was on MTV, I went into being a volunteer, but I just felt like I was doing something that was all about my heart and all about my spirit. And MTV was more about pop culture. So I felt like they worked really well. And I think I had so much fun and such success on MTV was because I had something else that really made me feel like I am confident and I am really taking the best out of life.
Because it was real. Because you're actually dealing with real interaction with people where you see the benefit of what you have to bring, so that it sort of balanced out the I don't know what the word is, but essentially the inauthentic nature sometimes of something like being an MTV host.
Yeah.
But one of the things I noticed Duff, was that, as somebody who watched a lot of MTV and now hearing this story now, is that you just had like this cool quality too. Was that you, or did they try to give you the makeover, like the TV makeover?
Yes, it was cheeky.
I know.
She already has a cool quality. Did you see the way she came on? I mean, she came on, I was like, all right, how's my hair?
It was so funny because I would get my hair cut at the barbershop on Horatio Street. And it was this guy named One-Eyed Louie. And they called him One-Eyed Louie because he only had one eye.
Of course.
And
it's amazing how that happens, isn't it? Why didn't call you One-Eyed Louie? I don't know.
So he was cutting my hair, and I said, I'm on TV now, Louie. I'm still working at the nursing home, but I'm working at MTV. And he said, let me tell you something, kid. If you got all that hair out of your face, you'd be a good-looking fella. So my barber thought I was a man.
Louie, I like this One-Eyed Louie.
And the crazy thing was, so what Louie lacked in stereoscopic vision, he gave me a great crookedy haircut.
And that became your defining look, right? That was like
the Duff look.
So funny, Jason, was my bosses were like, we've got to come and take a photo of your hair. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay. So I was in the VJ lounge and I was like, what's this for? And they're like, oh, Michael Jackson wants your haircut. And honestly, there is a video, the one he did with Lisa Marie, and he has the same crooked
I
haircut.
hope it was One-Eyed Louie who did it.
Oh, I don't know if he did.
Well, that makes sense. It was iconic. I mean, your look was iconic.
Oh.
I mean, it was just like.
And how long after that and that iconic look was put into place did like the Revlon stuff kick in? Because then it became even more iconic.
That came pretty quickly.
Here you were doing bingo, being of service, really enriching these people's lives and good with it. Well, enriching your life, but kind of good with it, feeling like, yeah, this is all right. And then this thing just started to snowball. Revlon, world fame. So from getting the MTV job to, in essence, Dumb and Dumber, because that was just like, that seemed to be the real quick sprint climb.
Dumb and Dumber. Yeah, just crazy stuff.
So from 91, I was on MTV, the end of 91. And so actually probably 92 to like 94 was Revlon, I think 94 was Dumb and Dumber. So I think what was interesting was nothing turned my head because, like some of the other VJs were like, yeah, this is hard work. I'm like, what's hard work? Wrestling a 300-pound invalid into a bathtub. So I had a real sense of reference because I had a job that I loved in service, in the medical field. And I also realized that the gift of being a voice of pop culture, it would be great, if I educated myself. So I would go to the Museum of Broadcasting and watch the old Frank Sinatra variety shows. And I just watched the way the Frank was always dressed up. And even though it was during the grunge era, I always dressed up, wore heels, because I felt like, well, if I'm essentially hosting, I should dress like a host, even though it's just like Poison videos or whatever, but hooray for them.
But what's so interesting, Duff, is you pointed to that because you were not only on MTV at a time when MTV was still MTV, but when the culture was turning over as well. So everything just all of a sudden felt fresh because it did go from Poison to Nirvana, and suddenly the Poison stuff was gone.
Exactly. And it turned overnight. And that was a great awakening, realizing the impermanence of things. I think we often want to hold on to something that where we're comfortable, but life doesn't work that way. Life is always changing, and we have to, wake up and take our shots. So I wound up getting again, having this amazing experience, but I was at the Emmys and my neck was killing me and my hands and feet were all tingly. So
I'm just sorry to interrupt you, Duff, but this was with at the Emmys with George Clooney, correct?
Yeah, I was just with George this weekend. It was his father's 90th birthday.
Wow.
And he said, I've known 4 generations of George's family. And he said, isn't it amazing, like how long we've been friends and how the last night, like you were healthy, we were together. And he remembered, he said, Duff, I remember you saying my hands and feet are all tingly. And he's like, yeah, I have that effect on women. It was interesting. So literally, like on a dime, I went from being at the Emmys and at MTV and working for Revlon, and then getting diagnosed with a very rare neurological disorder called sarcoidosis of the central nervous system. So what this is sarcoidosis, sadly, is epidemic in the population of Black women between the ages of 20 and 40. Um, and it attacks soft tissue. So your skin, your lungs, your eyes, which is why I'm wearing dark glasses today. But I have it in my brain, and that's quite rare. And what happens is your skull is a contained environment. So as this lesion, this granuloma, started growing, it destroyed the nerves in this back part of my neck and shoulder, and have no feeling in my hands or feet. So that happened like overnight.
What about chronic pain?
So you had no symptoms before that night at the Emmys?
It was like being hit by a bus. Like I had nothing. I was, I was straight. I didn't do drugs. I was like, I barely took aspirin. And so I went right to the hospital, and they figured out pretty early that this was something that was serious.
How friggin' frightening.
It was when you're in it, because I realized that I had to mourn for my old life because that has sailed. I'm no longer insurable, on set, so I couldn't work as an actor or on a set any longer because I couldn't have passed a Screen Actors Guild physical. So pretty much, I had to mourn for my old life, and then figure out, okay, who am I going to be now? Like, this is, in a way, I had a midlife crisis at 35 because I had to figure out.
I love the way you stated too. I mean, obviously, it's in the rear view, but I had to mourn for my old life is no fucking joke. that is a painful process. And so when you say it, I hear it as, okay, that's a cauldron to have to, walk through. That is quite a journey to just get to, okay, now what, right? Before you get to now what, you got to go through that. So God.
And especially if you're content and happy with your life, and having to still find that contentment and happiness in a new version of yourself.
Again, and I think it's so important was to feel useful, and having a sense of purpose. I think everyone needs a sense of purpose. And what really helped was, again, right, when I was working in MTV and being a voice of pop culture, I thought this would be a great time to really study classical wisdom as well.
Thinks no one ever.
Well, I just thought, you know what, like I want to.
This would be a good time to really not only educate myself, but to get really, really deep in terms of philosophy and life and purpose.
Because you know what, I wanted to be entertaining but be smart. Like, I would always find crazy facts, like in the time it takes to say 4,000 puppies have been born in the United States. So like
Which, by
weird.
the way, I'm a dog person, so that's my
Oh,
favorite
you
fact
literally,
ever now.
you just
I'm going to use that one.
You turned to left, and I mean, he's just as happy as can be right now.
Are you kidding? Do you think this is the first time I've listened to your show? You've been visiting my ear holes for quite a long time. I knew that was a softball, buddy. I
God, you just lobbed it up.
right up with the
Nice work, Duff. Very good.
So Duff, when you talk about mourning your old life, how long was that period for you until you felt comfortable enough to take that next step into the new life?
I would, it took a while because uh, I was in the hospital for months, and uh, I was on chemotherapy for a total of 7 years, and I was also on steroids. Um, so I really needed to take time to take care of my physical body, but the great thing is I was able to still read, and I think turning and having this background in Stoic philosophy and understanding that if you make beautiful choices, you can make a beautiful life. And although my life had really pivoted, um, I realized too, it's not the depth, it's not the length of how long we live, it's how deeply we live every day. And so I would say it took a few years, but I was still like, trying to be active. I could no longer volunteer at the nursing home because of my low immune system, not until I was after chemo. But it's one of those things where we're challenged, and it's amazing how resilient we are and how we often underestimate our strength, and truly how we can recover. And we often think, oh, that's the worst thing, living with chronic pain. If it was anybody else with me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, how do you do it? But
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is my next question.
Yeah.
well, it's interesting, Danny, is that pain is inevitable. We are all going to experience pain, whether it's, emotional or physical. We all are going to experience pain, and that is inevitable. But suffering can be optional. So while I'm in pain right now as we talk, and I had to change my shirt so it wouldn't press on my neck, the moments where I am able to accomplish more, I do. And the days when I'm 3 or 4 days a week where I'm laid up, I do it, but I give myself grace. I mean, I don't want to beat myself up. When pain has me tethered to the sofa like Gulliver in Lilliput, I don't want to hate my life or hate the pain. It's interesting. There's this vernacular, these warlike metaphors of you're going to battle this, and then we're going to fight it, and then we're going to blast it with the chemo. And I'm just like, whoa, I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the level of acceptance and the level of adjustment isn't something that you figured out. It's something that on a day-to-day basis you have to do. You have to accept the level that you're feeling, what you're capable of for that particular day, and what adjustments you need to make to deal with what you're dealing with on that particular. So there's a real one day at a time aspect of this.
You know
isn't
what?
there?
You're the first person to really get that. That's amazing.
Well, I just make shit up.
No,
I just hope it lands.
it's true. It is every day. I go to bed, and when I wake up, I'm like the scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz, and the mean monkeys have come, and I don't know what the mean monkeys, what part of stuffing. Like, you know, I have issues with mobility and walking and balance, and so every day it's something different, which keeps it interesting, but also it is a continual evolution of acceptance and understanding that this is a degenerative disease. And um, while I have sarcoidosis, it has caused something called complex regional pain syndrome, um, which is just living in incredibly high level pain. And one of my favorite things in my book is I made the Bill Murray pain scale because I love Bill. And like, so all the pain, like when you go to the doctor's office, they always have a picture and it's like all these.
1 to
Yeah, it's
10.
like a happy face.
Yeah, 1 to 10, all of these.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
did it with
Yeah.
Bill. And so like that's the worst.
That's
So and then
outstanding.
there goes the worst. And because I thought, who wants to like pain in being a patient can be very infantilizing. I mean, just went in for an MRI this week and they were like, "Do you want a coloring book?" And it's like,
No, they
Yes.
did not. That's you. Oh my God! They literally went to okay here. What's the appropriate behavior?
I'm there all the time. And I was like, "Are you serious? Is this
Oh
a joke?" And
God.
they said, "No, no, no. People find it relaxing." And I was like, "Oh, good for them." But no, I think I'll read. I'll be fine.
Mhm.
But it is very infantilizing because I think people project how terrible it must be to live in pain all the time. But part of the challenge of life is to squeeze as much fun as you can out of it.
Is there a part of you that feels like, okay, I not only got this rare disease, but I get the rare version in the brain where it feels like because you're so willing and you have the platform to go out there and speak about it, is that you're kind of like the ambassador for this now in terms of being able to help people through it that might not have had that voice before.
Jason, that has been something I've been doing for the past 20 years is because it's invisible. Pain is invisible. A lot of chronic illnesses are invisible, and most are women. Autoimmune diseases are probably like 70% female. And I think it's important that I use my experience in the medical field, but also as a communicator, as a broadcaster, to put into words what can be so inexplicable. Like pain destroys language. I mean, when you're in pain, you're like, "How are you?" You're like, "Wah." The word pain is derived from the Latin puona, which in Latin is defined as punishment or penalty. So living with chronic pain is almost, it feels like, well, you're being punished for a crime you didn't commit. And so it is interesting how pain does destroy language and how I'm trying to get back by writing and using language and using words to express, to share with others. Because listen, like it's astonishing. Like 1 out of 5 Americans, 20% lives with chronic pain. So acute pain comes again from the Latin acute, which means sharp. So acute pain often has a visible wound or bone break, and acute pain will last up to 90 days.
Yeah, there's a finality to it,
Yes.
which you can sort of hang on, but when it comes to, what you struggle with, there's no end to it.
So that's exactly what chronic means, Danny. Chronic comes from, again, the Latin chronos, meaning time. So chronic chronos is without time, without end. So it just, and again, you have to get used to it and get used to the idea that, okay, I'm going to be living with this for the rest of my life. And if I hate it, I will be hating far too much of my life because I love life and I want to give back and I have my sense of purpose. And I've been given so much.
Do you think they're a part of you? Do you think a part of you, Duff, because you had that experience in the nursing home and seeing people who were going through whatever pain they were going through? I know you mentioned it was a memory ward, but do you think that has given you a particular perspective that maybe somebody else wouldn't, just because you had dealt with patient so early in your life?
It's interesting. I would say what I learned truly was compassion, and uh, and I also, again, I'm going on entomology, but compassion again comes from the Latin. It means suffering together, calm meaning together, and like so. There's this suffering together, and I think because I was comfortable with the end of my life, I was comfortable um, with being around death at the nursing home. So I became a hospice chaplain about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Um,
What?
and
That's literally going right into the fire of dealing with a level of grief that is hard to hold. I cannot believe that that's what you, on top of all this, it's kind of remarkable. You're unbelievable.
It's what my sister does for a living.
oh, wow.
And the best part of that is that these people, many of them, don't have anybody else to do it with. And so to be able to be there for somebody during that time, it's an amazing thing.
It was because I'm in the Buddhist tradition, that was the course that I took. And I really, it was, I figured, oh, I'm good at this. I know. But then I was at the hospital, and I was telling my teachers, I was like, I don't think they want me bothering them. And they're like, why do you say that? And I said, well, have you spent any time in a hospital? And they're like, no. And I said, listen, the last thing you want is somebody knocking on your door. And he said, Duff, not everybody's like you. So I'm going to be watching you like a hawk. And I'm like, yeah, me and my big mouth. So I wound up, I would negotiate with the other chaplains. I'd be like, listen, I've got no sense of smell from chemo. And I was like, give me all the stinkers. I will take them all.
Give me the stinkers. Wow.
I was like, nothing will bother me.
No, sure.
And I thought that's the way I could add a little bit, to help my other esteemed colleagues. I no longer, again, because of my, after the pandemic, my doctor just said, that's it. But I'm able to do service in other ways. And that's what's so beautiful. Working as a big sister my first big sister just became like the head of NYU physical therapy.
That's
and
awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So there
Wow.
are many ways to help. I mean, I love Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC has an amazing program called Camp Felix, which is assisting kids in foster care. So, in our family, we always used to have this quote by Muhammad Ali that said, service is the price we pay for living on earth. And so I grew up, like, my family had refugees from Vietnam. We always had kids in foster care. We always had a open door, and my parents were very it was important to them to pass on the fact that service is so important. And part of my daily ritual is every day I write a thank you note to somebody in the world. And whether I'm reading the paper, I'll just take a photo of their name and then I'll look them up. And it's not like there's no return address, because it's not about reciprocity. Like, it's not an email, because like then you're burdening somebody, that they've got to get back. So instead, I'm just like, hey, you know what? I read about, what you're dealing with, and I'm so grateful that for your service and for your kindness. And or it could just be somebody who, I was at dinner in Kentucky the other night, and our waitress was amazing, and I'm sending her a pin. Like, I just ordered her a pin, like this little mouse pin that I have on my shoulder. So I just find every day having the opportunity to say thank you in a way.
And also, I see you, which is, which, by the way, everyone could use a little
Mhm.
more of. And what's really fascinating about your story to me is that you already started with being in the middle of Hollywood and all of that entire, tidal wave that it can be. You already had that experience, and you sort of seem to be able to, even in the midst of all that, keep things right sized. And boy, did that serve you well. I mean, that's really served you well in life. I mean, I guess you started that way, you kept it that way, and then have had to call upon it in order to walk through what you're walking
Gonna
through.
say it. It sounds like you have such a great foundation with your family that brought you up in a way that to give that service to other people.
You have a great foundation as a human being.
Oh.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
Yo,
No, it's literally that. I mean, that's the impression I could be wrong, but that is the impression that I have. I want to ask you this audience question because it's just it's back to MTV
Okay.
as it always is, right? Doesn't it always go back to MTV? Mike B asks, "I was the MTV generation. You were such a big part of that. What is your most memorable MTV moment?"
Okay, I've got two.
Great.
The first week, it was MTV Unplugged. The first time Nirvana played at MTV, it was just before "Smells Like Teen Spirit" was blowing up, and they destroyed all of the instruments. And I remember, like, my esteemed colleagues being like, "I can't believe they destroyed all the instruments." I was like, "Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
Rock and
Like,
roll.
that's their job." That was
Punk rock, man.
They were wearing like musty old sweaters, and I really enjoyed that. And then I really had I met somebody who's so dear in my life, who was from the band Ugly Kid Joe.
Oh, love Ugly Kid Joe. One of my favorite records, that first one. Oh, man.
That first record is so great. And Whit Crane, the lead singer, we dated for a few years, and it was just his birthday. And like, it's just amazing that how long, like, when you meet somebody on MTV Spring Break, you never expect, when we're 58, we're going to still be together. And, it's pretty amazing. So I've got many great friends. I'm friends with, the people behind, who were on the crew. I'm friends with Tabitha Soren and Allison Stewart and Steve Isaacs. So we all stay in touch, which is really great.
It's funny how that generation of MTV, for me, I mean, the moment that stands out is just like hearing about Kurt Cobain's death and all these things. Like that's, for my generation, is where we even got our news. And so to see MTV now, it just drives me crazy that it's just bad reality shows now.
It's something else. It's absolutely
something
else.
My son, when we're walking around, like when he was little, he'd be like, "How do all these people know you?" And I was like, "Well, I was on MTV when they played music, and then they had people like, that's crazy talk." Like,
well, Duff, I got one more question for you before we call it. And this is like for people who are suffering from chronic pain. And I was thinking about this when we were talking. Is like, it's one of those things that other people can't qualify. They can't quantify it. They can't see it. So for somebody who's feeling that chronic pain, and the other people don't seem to understand it or accept that they are going through this terrible thing in their life, like, how do they get over that hump of not needing their acceptance and just having to deal with it without the outside peripheral knowing what they're going through?
Well, that's a great question. And I would highly suggest uspainfoundation.org. They are unbelievable. I've been working with them for 20 years. They are masterful. They have classes and seminars which focus just on this topic, because it can be so isolating, and we spend a lot of time at home alone, and people think, "Oh, well, you look good." And, a lot of my comrades who also are dealing with chronic illness, like when people say, "Oh, well, you look good." And I was like, how can you get mad at that? Like, people don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
It is unbelievable. Like, we are living with something that is so scary, and we have to understand and again give compassion, because if somebody as awesome as Jason gets chronic illness, chronic pain, like, that's not fair, because Jason's an awesome dude, and if it happens to Jason, that means it can happen to anybody. So often it is, it's based from fear. And I have lost a few friends who just don't understand. It's so important for me to show up and not punk out. But I realize, you know what? Sometimes you have to weed your social garden.
I was going to say something really stupid, and thank God you jumped in right before I said it. But I was going to say, the only reference that I have really is when I pulled out my back, like I pulled my back, and it's just fucking intense, and it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. And the idea to having to deal with that on a consistent basis is about the closest that I, can really sort of, I mean, I've had surgeries and stuff, but that level of it's not getting better. You can't move to change it. There's nothing you can do. Whatever you take takes the edge off of it, but you still have it, that kind of pain.
Yeah. And that's why I asked that question, because it's one of those things where unless you're in it, you don't really know what it's like. So it's hard to relate to the person who is experiencing that. And I'm sure she and other people with chronic pain have had somebody say, oh, just muscle through it. You can do this. Just walk it off.
Well, even if that's not, even if they're not that insensitive, they don't have that.
I assume all people are a-holes. That's just my vibe.
I was gonna say, even if they don't have that level of insensitivity, how have you been? Do you still have that pain thing? Anyway, so my daughter, it just like. It's I still have that pain thing, just like I still have a face. It's just like, and I love her take on it. The expectations that people would have a certain amount of understanding, sensitivity, and knowledge of appropriate response is too much to ask. But certainly people can educate themselves. That's always I just think we got to give people time.
And for me personally, I was pretty psyched that we got an ugly Kid Joe reference into this episode.
Yeah, well, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to Karen Duffy as much as I did, and I certainly have a different perspective that I did not have before this, so thanks for listening.
Music by Denny Nucci, produced and edited by the same two people you heard hosting this show, because they have no friends.